Okay, today we are going to read part of this book called Amelia Earhart, Legend in Flight. Amelia Earhart, Legend in Flight. And there she is. Introduction. The tiny red airplane bounced among the clouds 12,000 feet above the water. Below, icebergs jutted out of the cold waves. Giant black storm clouds lay ahead. The year was 1932. The airplane carried Amelia Earhart, one of the most famous pilots in the United States. She had been the first woman to ride an airplane over the Atlantic, although a man flew the plane. Now, if she made it, she would be the first woman to fly an airplane over the Atlantic herself. And she would be the first person, male or female, to have crossed the Atlantic in an airplane twice. But first, she had to succeed. There was a reason why so few people had made it. The trip was dangerous. Airplanes in the 1930s were small, and they didn't have many of the instruments today's pilots rely on. A pilot had to go by her sense of sight and how the plane felt, keeping tight control of the airplane for hours at a time. The black clouds ahead were too large to fly around, so Amelia pointed the little plane right into them. The rain soon turned to ice, and the plane's controls froze, sending it into a tailspin. A tailspin means like the plane is spinning in a circle. As the plane plummeted toward the water, Amelia struggled to get control. Finally, the warmer air below the clouds melted the ice, and Amelia was able to pull the plane out of its spin. Many hours later, Amelia sat the plane down in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. She had done it. She had crossed the Atlantic Ocean in an airplane she flew herself. Before this flight, she had already been famous. Now, she would be a legend. But Amelia Earhart would be most remembered for her biggest failure. While trying to fly her plane around the world, she disappeared. It means no one knows where she went. Winged machines. The first airplane flight occurred in 1903 when Amelia was 6 years old. Two brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright, had built a winged machine out of wood. They launched it successfully into the air at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And this is their first plane. Although many people thought they were crazy, others thought the idea of flying was exciting. It was dangerous, to be sure. Planes were fragile, slow, and low-flying. They did not fly well in bad weather, and many pilots died in crashes. By 1937, airplanes had improved a lot. The first airplanes had begun carrying passengers on short routes, mostly over land. Engineers designed better airplanes, and pilots like Amelia learned to fly them more safely, but accidents still happened. Kansas youth. Anyone who knew Amelia as a child could hardly have been surprised by her later accomplishments. She was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24th, 1897. She spent most of her time at her grandparents' home with her cousins and friends. They climbed around the banks of the Missouri River. Amelia led expeditions, that's like explorations, they're exploring. She led expeditions into caves, and she loved to ride horses. She made up games for the children to play in her grandfather's barn. She and her sister Muriel were such active children that their mother made bloomers. Those are like frilly pants for them to wear. Unlike dresses, bloomers allowed the girls to run and ride and climb just like the boys did. At the time, most girls were not allowed to be so active, but Amelia was determined. Amelia's happy childhood came to an end when she was 11. Her parents took Amelia and Muriel to live in Iowa, but her father couldn't find a job. The family moved several more times. Amelia made few new friends. When Amelia was 21, her family moved to California. One day, she attended an air show. The airplanes dazzled her, flying in loops and doing stunts. After that, Amelia didn't finish college. She knew she wanted to fly. With her parents' help, Amelia took piloting lessons and saved enough money to buy an airplane. Before long, the young woman was flying in air shows herself. Time to fly. When she wasn't flying, Amelia moved to Boston and found a job at Denson House. It was a place where poor people, especially children, could receive help. She loved her work there and she was good at it. She was making a name for herself. But then the opportunity of a lifetime presented itself. A publicist in New York named George Putnam was trying to find a woman to be the first to ride in an airplane over the Atlantic. It was a dangerous idea. 3 women had died trying to cross the Atlantic the previous year. Only men had ever crossed the Atlantic in an airplane. Anyone who would try it had to be tough as nails in order to withstand the danger and fatigue. George thought Amelia Earhart was perfect, and she was eager to go. And then this picture says, Amelia Earhart, flyer, and in her lifetime, Amelia worked many jobs. At that time, it was unusual for women to have jobs at all. She was a nurse, a social worker, a pilot, a clothing designer, magazine editor, writer, airline executive, professor. She also helped start the 99s, a group of women pilots that still exists today.